Welcome to Everyday Kindness, where every story is a reflection of love, hope, and the small miracles that touch our hearts. Tonight's story is called The Coat He Never Returned. The city was glowing under a quiet drizzle, streetlights blurring softly through the mist. Alexander Hayes stood outside a warmly lit restaurant called La Belle Noire, holding a white coat close to his chest. The coat wasn't new, it carried faint traces of perfume, the softness of old cotton, and the memory of a woman he had once loved more than anything. Clara Bennett, an artist who had changed his life with her laughter and color. She was the light that filled his world when everything else felt mechanical. Years ago, when he was building his empire, he didn't realize he was losing the only thing that made him human, her. One rainy night, she left without tears or anger, just quiet resignation. She placed her apartment key on the counter and said, "Sometimes love isn't about holding on. It's about knowing when to let go." He had let her go, but never truly moved on. Her white coat stayed in his closet for 5 years, untouched, but never forgotten. Every time he opened the door, it was there, reminding him of everything he couldn't say. One evening, he received an invitation to an art exhibition. The artist's name froze his breath, Clara Bennett. Against his better judgment, he went. After the show, she had asked him to meet her at this restaurant. Now, here he was, standing in the same spot where he'd once waited for her laughter. When the door opened, time stopped. Clara stood before him in a soft pink dress, her golden hair glowing in the restaurant's light. She looked older, softer, wiser, yet heartbreakingly familiar. "Alexander," she whispered. "You came." He nodded, lifting the white coat slightly. "You left this behind." She looked at it for a long moment and smiled gently. "You kept it?" He breathed out, almost a laugh. "I tried not to." They sat together inside, their table by the window catching reflections of city lights and passing rain. At first, words came slow, small talk about life, art, work, and time. Then, truth slipped in quietly between their pauses. She spoke of her travels, of finding herself through loneliness. He admitted that he had built a fortune but lost his peace. Her voice trembled as she said, "You always show up when the story's already over." He replied softly, "Maybe it's not over." She smiled sadly. "It always was, Alexander. You just didn't notice." Then she stood, leaving her untouched wine behind, and walked into the rain. He followed her, finding her beneath the awning outside, rain running down her hair like tears. He draped the white coat over her shoulders and said, "You'll catch a cold." She looked at him, eyes shimmering. "It still fits," she whispered. "It was always yours," he said quietly. She smiled through the sadness. "Just for tonight, let's remember who we were." They walked together down the wet streets. Weeks passed after that night. The world returned to its rhythm, but Alexander's heart carried a strange stillness. Then one morning, a brown envelope arrived at his doorstep. Inside was the same white coat, neatly folded, and a short note written in Clara's delicate handwriting, "Some things belong where they started. Thank you for keeping me warm when I couldn't do it for myself." He held the note for a long time, smiling through the ache. That night, he hung the coat back in his wardrobe and poured himself a glass of wine. For the first time in years, he didn't feel haunted, he felt grateful. Months later, while on a business trip in Florence, he stumbled upon a small art gallery tucked between 2 narrow streets. Inside, the walls were covered with paintings that breathed emotion. And then he saw it, a piece that stopped him cold. A man stood under a golden streetlight, holding a white coat in his hands as rain fell around him. Across from him, a woman walked away. The painting was titled, "The Night We Remembered." His breath caught. It was their night, every detail painted with love and pain. It was as if she had taken their last moment and turned it into something eternal. He stared at the canvas for a long time, realizing that Clara had found her closure, not in forgetting him, but in immortalizing their goodbye. He smiled softly and whispered to himself, "You always did know how to say goodbye beautifully." From that day on, Alexander began to live differently. He left the noise of corporate chaos behind and started teaching architecture to young dreamers. The white coat still hung by his door, no longer a wound, but a gentle memory. Then one evening, another envelope arrived. Inside was a cream-colored invitation card that read, "You once told me that moments can live forever. Come see what forever looks like now. Clara Bennett, Gallery Luno, Paris." His hands trembled. He didn't think twice, he booked the next flight. The night of the exhibition in Paris was alive with laughter, art, and golden light. Gallery Luno buzzed with guests, but Alexander heard nothing except the echo of his own heartbeat. The walls around him were covered with Clara's art, each painting a window into her soul. There was the cafe where they first met, the apartment balcony where they watched sunsets, the restaurant where they said goodbye. Every painting was a piece of their story. And then, at the end of the hall, one canvas glowed under a soft spotlight. It showed an older man holding a letter in one hand, while a woman stood behind him, watching with eyes full of forgiveness. The title read, "When He Found Me Again." Alexander stood frozen, heart trembling. Then, behind him, a soft voice said, "You always find me in the places I least expect." He turned, and there she was, Clara. Dressed in white, her face radiant with calm. They stared at each other for a long, beautiful silence. Then she smiled. "Hello, Alexander." He exhaled slowly. "You always know how to leave me speechless." She laughed softly. "I told you, my art speaks for me." They walked together through the gallery, talking about the years that had shaped them. "Why now?" he asked quietly. She looked at the paintings and said, "Because I finally learned to forgive, not you, not me, but time." He smiled, eyes glistening. "You were always my peace, Clara. I just realized it too late." She reached out and took his hand gently. "Maybe not too late," she whispered. They left the gallery together, walking along the Seine, the city glowing like memory itself. The night was calm, the air soft. She told him she'd painted that exhibition to close a chapter, but meeting him made her realize it might be a door instead. "A door to what?" he asked. She smiled. "To everything we never finished." Months later, her final exhibition opened in London. At its center hung a painting titled "The Coat He Never Returned." It showed a man placing a white coat over a woman's shoulders as rain fell around them. Their faces were peaceful, full of understanding. Critics called it timeless. But Alexander knew it was their story, not about losing, not about winning, but about finally finding home in forgiveness. Standing beside her as the world admired their memory, he whispered, "Do you think we'll last this time?" She looked up at him with quiet certainty and said, "We already did." And that was how love returned, not with fire, not with promises, but with quiet kindness. Because sometimes, the truest kind of love doesn't need forever, it just needs a moment to find its way back home. Yellow Heart presented by Everyday Kindness, stories that heal hearts, one soul at a time.